did the onions, the garlic, the ginger. We did coriander, turmeric, and cinnamon. And we did, oh, you know what I didn't do was the saffron. There was a little thing, I like actually putting the saffron in. And that's also an optional thing. And if you don't, these little saffron threads are very, very teeny. I don't even know if one could see them and how close that I could put them. You often just use the stem of a flower, you know, and my friend gives them to me. It's very expensive, so you have to think that this, you pretend it is gold. And usually you dissolve them in some water and then you put it in. But for right this very minute, I'm just gonna add them here. And just the fewest saffron threads can make a difference. Not so much to the taste, but to the color, and I like using them. But again, I treat them like they're gold. So we're still reading. We did the squash and the eggplant and the carrots. We did tomatoes, we did the stalk, and we did the lemon, and we did the tomatoes, and we did the raisins, and now we're just cooking. So we flip this over right now, and I just have the recipes here in a little plastic sleeve so they don't end up looking like I've, you know, soaked them in water. And then they go right back into a notebook. So I have 3-ring binder here. So that's the recipe here. We're going to quickly get the dry ingredients together. That's the first thing. And also the first thing I always do is get the oven preheated. So we're preheating the oven to 350. And 350 is what it's on right now. And we're going to mix, and I have all the dry ingredients here. So we're going to have 3/4 cup of polenta. And what polenta is, a cornmeal, okay? And then some people say, well, I've showed corn flour as well. It all comes from corn. It's a matter of how it's ground. Corn flour looks very soft and silky, just like a all-purpose flour. This is polenta, and it's a fine ground polenta. And if you don't find the fine ground and you can use the regular ground. It's fine, medium ground. But I sometimes give it a whirl in the Vitamix or in the NutriBullet. But it's very soft now. And then we also need a 1/2 cup of almond flour, okay, or meal. Sometimes it's called meal. And we need 2 tablespoons. And the reason that I didn't put the rest of the ingredients in here is I kind of wanted to show you my method of when I'm doing any kind of cooking or baking, that the minute I start doing this, I actually start arranging things in the bowl. And it is because, you know, the phone rings all the time, you get distracted by something else, and you often will lose track of exactly where you are. So this is my method. So we know we have a 1/2 cup plus 2 tablespoons in here. So if for some reason I get, you know, distracted, I have already measured out a 3/4 teaspoon of powder and soda. So I'm going to put all of that in here. And I know that I combine those things. And then we can go ahead and add the cinnamon and the nutmeg. Sometimes I put this into the wet ingredients, but we actually can put it in here. And for cinnamon and nutmeg, we only need a 1/4 teaspoon. And we just have to find, I think here's a 1/4 teaspoon, a clean one. And we need a 1/4 teaspoon. And again, I continue with my logic of 1/4 teaspoon there. And the other spice that I really very much like to have whole, we just talked about coriander being whole and ground fresh. Nutmeg is one of those dry spices that it's like another world if you actually are grinding it. And they make the microplaners, but I very much I have this, I don't even know if you can find it anymore, but it's a little small microplaner. I've had it forever. Most of the microplaners now are long and thin, and they look like this. I just want to show you. They look like this, okay? That's a microplaner. But I actually have a little one that has a container, and it actually holds the little nutmeg, which is amazing. So I'm just going to give this a couple little shakes, and we need a 1/4 teaspoon, okay? And again, this is so heavenly. Oh, I love it, love it, love it. There's nothing like fresh nutmeg. And we're going to put a 1/4 teaspoon, and that's going to go there. Okay, and the other piece of nutmeg, the 1/2 piece, is just going to go back in its container, and we do that. Okay, we immediately move on to our wet ingredients. I'm going to lower this, a little bit. I'm standing right next to it. It's boiling hot. And I'm also going to make sure that I have a big spoon to stir it. And I think my spoon has walked away, possibly. Maybe not, but I'm just looking for my big spoon. Well, we'll use this one. It's fine. I don't know what happened to the metal spoon. It's probably very close. It's so close to me, it's on the counter. Amazing. You see, sometimes you don't know. And this is cooking and looking fantastic. Okay, we'll just put this spoon in there like that. Okay, we are now going to, I just want to show you what this looks like. And I'm going to give it a little mixing with the whisk and get all those dry ingredients together. Okay, everybody knows about mixing dry, and then you make the wet ingredients, and then the two go together. If you've ever made cornbread or any quick bread, just and what I'm doing with my fingers here, there's a few pieces of almond meal that like to make clumps. So that's that. Okay, we're moving on very quickly now to the wet ingredients, and I'm going to get those out of the refrigerator. And they're right here. These are my wet ingredients. I actually have a bowl in the refrigerator. It's not necessary, but I used to be a pastry chef, and whenever you whipped up, we're going to whip up the aquafaba. Some people I used to, in the old days, whip up egg whites, and it's nice to chill your bowl. So not necessary, but just a tip. And this is our drained bean juice. So that's sitting here. And then we're going to use a small container, and this is yogurt. And there are a couple different brands that I like. This is Forager. There's a Kite Hill, and this is a nut cashew yogurt. Okay, so that's going to go in the. We need all of that, and it's actually 6 tablespoons, but we need it all. Okay, and I'm just going to make sure that we're doing all this quickly so that we don't run out of time. And then we're going to put date paste. And if you can look up how to make date paste. I just soak a bunch of dates, like this 11 dates or 10 dates, and I cover them with water, and then I blend them in a mixer, and so that they're all become paste. And I keep a big jar of that in my refrigerator anytime that I need any kind of little bit of sugar. Okay, so these two things are now combined. The vanilla, we need vanilla. We need a whole teaspoon of vanilla. And let's get that out, done. I think here's the teaspoon, and that's gonna go in here, okay? That's our wet ingredients. And then very quickly, we are going to make the aquafaba. And the reason that I'm making that with you is because I thought that you wouldn't, those of you who don't bake regularly, I thought it'd be really a lot of fun to see how it whips up, but it will take 3 to 4 minutes for us to mix that. So let me just get these wet ingredients into our dry ingredients. Okay, so getting that all in there. Again, I think this is a very fast cake. Okay, we're gonna get that, and I'm gonna take a big, I like these spoons that look like, it's a spatula, but it's a spoon. Whoever invented that a number of years ago, I remember when it first came out, and we were like, oh, that's genius. Whoever thought of that, making a spoon and a spatula. I don't know what the purpose of the flat spatulas are sometimes, because the spoon ones are awesome. I even have a special spoon just for the Vitamix because it's got a long needle nose. Okay, so that is all mixed. Okay, and you can see that's very thick. Okay, that is our cake batter. But very quickly now, we're going to whisk these aquafaba. And I decided it's kind of boring to watch me whisk, but I thought that it's very important for you to see that it's very magical. And when I worked years ago in a restaurant, and we were still mixed, and I was making things with eggs, I still thought about my grandmother. You know, my grandmother taught me about whisking. I think during the Jewish holidays, you know, during Passover, you'd make many sponge cakes that needed lots and lots of egg whites. But this is the magic now when you're not eating any animals and you're not using any dairy, and is the aquafaba. So we need 6 tablespoons. So I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, okay? We have 6 tablespoons, okay? And it's going to be noisy just for a very few minutes. I have an little immersion blender here, and I'm going to put it at 5. And it's just going to take a couple minutes. You have to be patient, but you'll just see that it's going to get all whisked up and it's going to become fluffy. It does kind of squirt a little bit sometimes everywhere if you don't use a big enough bowl. I have a big stand mixer, but I like using this when I'm mixing so little. And it does take a couple of minutes. It always reminds me of also drying my hair sometimes. Like, you can get it dry and you can get it whisked, but you really need to take it to the full, the full end of it, okay? You can't just say, I'm done, it looks whisked. You really have to. My grandmother used to turn the bowl upside down, and as a kid, I'd be like, oh, it's gonna fall out, but it never falls out. But you can see it's getting bright white right now. And I think you can see this very clearly. And I'm just giving it, again, stirring it. It's happening. Sometimes my hand gets tired. Good for your muscles. And at this moment, I'm going to also, while we're doing this, I like, again, rereading everything that's, we did I'm looking carefully at the ingredients, and we've done everything. And we have and at the same time, we have to be careful to pour it here by the stove, that I'm not burning I have a closer plug, but this is a better outlet here. And in this particular instance, we don't need any cream of tartar. There's oftentimes when you put a teaspoon of cream of tartar, which helps make it stiff and makes it have peaks. But in this recipe, I don't use any cream of tartar. So let me just, again, some people would say, oh, this looks really done, but it's not, okay? I just want to, again, I like saying, it's just, you have to keep going. Just when you think you're done, you're not done, okay? And even when I think I'm done, now can you overbeat this? You can, but I have never really deflated it. Think of it like you're whisking all the air into the egg. Well, it's not an egg. I keep calling it an egg because that's what I used to use, but it is the magic, just like it, only with bean juice. And again, I'm doing this right in front of you because I think it's magical. There's never a moment that I am just like, oh yeah, that's the results you get. Because something about baking still is very magical to me. Okay, now I'm going to show you. This is when you might think you're done, okay? You're making peaks, okay? You see the peaks are there. And it is done, but I give it another minute. Just when I think it's done, I say I'm giving it another minute. And I am going to, and I like doing the little, is it making a nice peak? Is it? Yeah, see? Can you see that? Can you see that it's a little teeny peak? I just want to show you. It's like, see, it's like the peak of a mountain. Okay, so that's done. That is done and beautiful. And I shake that off, and I immediately take this away, and I release this, and I get rid of this cord. And what we're going to do now is fold this into our batter. Now, sometimes if you had a lot of batter, you would put a little batter into this and you would begin to lighten the batter. But this is, for time, I just am going to put all of the aquafaba, all of it, the whole bowl full, okay, every single bit of it into here. And I'm going to start to fold it. Now, you don't want to overmix at this point, okay? This is really, at this point, you don't want to deflate all the time that you put all the air into the bean juice, okay? That is key, but you do want to get it all incorporated and mixed because you don't want to have any funny little white stripes, white swirls going through your cake, because that's what will happen if you don't get it all mixed. Okay, so that is the cake batter, and that is immediately now going in, and I want to show that to you what that looks like. Okay, and that immediately is going to go into our 8-inch spring-form pan. Okay, and a spring-form pan is just exactly what it is. It actually allows us, it has a spring, and the bottom just falls out. And I have cut a piece of parchment paper to go at the bottom because we're not greasing or doing any oil in this pan. And it's going to be the piece of parchment that keeps the cake from sticking. And then we're going to lock that up. Okay, and then we're going to pour this cake into the batter, into the pan. Now, at this point, this is when we get to have our fun. And it does take a little bit of time to do the next step. And we're going to give it a little bit of, just going to spread this out. Okay, spread this out, make it even. And again, I have the oven preheated. And I'm going to show you that this is what this looks like. Now we're going to do the part that I love, which is the artistry of it all. And we're going to get a cutting board. And I've gotten a bunch of different kinds of apples because I live in the state of New York, and right now, like, it's going to become apple season. Well, it's starting to be because of fall. But I have a bunch of different kinds of apples. Granny Smith, Pippin. You can use Cortland apples and Jonathan Gold and Wine Sap. And I have prepped these apples ahead of time, and I peeled them, and then I cored them, and then I put some lemon juice on top so that they don't get brown. And then we're going to get a very, very sharp knife. But in the meantime, we are going to stir our stew, okay? Because we want to check out how are things going here. And it is actually looking quite beautiful. And I can show it to you. Let me get it really stirred. Everything is really cooking. Vegetables are starting to get soft. And how do you really know? And the raisins are getting very plump. I look like they're going to explode. I love the little black dots. And I'm going to actually give it a little bit of a taste as well. It's quite hot, but it's a good time now to taste it. Because sometimes you have to adjust the seasoning. But to tell you the truth, it's quite perfect at the moment. And I'm just going to before I always put the spoon down, I always give it a rinse. Because you don't know if someone else is in the kitchen with you and they're going to come and say, oh, you're cooking and I want to taste it. And they immediately. So I always give the spoon a rinse once it's gone in my mouth. And now I'm going to show it to you. Just want you to see what this is looking like. It's cooking down, probably about 1 inch it's cooked down. I just want to show you how that looks. Okay? And now we're putting it back and we're letting it finish cook. And we're going to put the lid on. And like I said, it's time to start decorating. So we're going to get the apple, and we want to cut the apple as thin as possible. Okay? And again, I'm going to use my knife here, and how thin as possible, I will show you in a minute once I get a bunch of apples. And again, I didn't do all this ahead of time because I think the part of learning is kind of seeing how it's done. Okay, and I will show you in a minute how thin these apples are. But let's get, it's kind of a production. So let's get a couple because I know that we need at least 1 apple. No, we need to have probably several apples. And I just like to get all the cutting part done ahead of time because sometimes you'll see that decorating up goes very fast. Okay. And I'm trying to make all the outside apples be the same apple. I mean, you could mix it up a little bit, but I did cut up several kinds of apples today. And I'm just cutting that up. And what we're going to do is start on the outside edge, decorating. Okay, so we're going to go on the edge, and I'm going to put this right here. And I'm going to grab these apples, and I'm going to show you. You see how they're very thin? Okay, they're very, very thin. And sometimes they're very little compared to a very big one. So I actually tend to put the little ones, the edge ones, to the side. I either eat them as a snack as I'm going, or they end up in the middle. And we're gonna start on the outside edge. And I'm gonna have to show you, but we're going to start and we're gonna overlap the apples. And we're gonna keep them all at the edge. And we're gonna go and we're gonna put the next layer halfway over. Every single slice of apple gets put halfway down. So I want you to see, can you see inside? It's very hard to see, but I'm just wanting you, I have to do all of it. And you're just gonna literally go around the edge the whole time, okay? And it gets a little, I don't know, it's kind of could be a fun thing for, if you have any 5-year-olds, I think they would be more than capable of doing this. When my friends had kids, I used to love baking with them so very much because they love the actual baking and the results are fast, you know? And when you get to the very end, you often need a knife because that very last apple that you're gonna put in often needs to go underneath the next apple. So I just lift up the apple to get a ring in. Okay, so this is what this is look like. And then we're gonna start now and we're gonna do the next layer, okay? The next layer. Now we are doing this very quickly, but very beautifully. And again, I told you this summer, I did this dessert with peaches and blueberries and rosemary, but I didn't use the cinnamon and the nutmeg inside. I actually used almond extract because almond went really lovely with the polenta. So this cake has become a versatile cake. And probably, I don't know, next week I'll probably make it with pears. The same exact batter. So again, it looks like I'm almost done. Do you see where we're at here? We're working our way towards the center. I'm trying to, again, constantly overlap. I have a lot of little teeny ends that we don't need. And let's go back and, oh, I see I didn't even pour this particular apple. And get that. And we need just a little bit. And the middle kind of gets to be a little tricky sometimes when you're finishing it off. Now, in the old days, I used to actually sprinkle this with sugar, but I don't do that anymore. And I actually give it a coating with an apricot glaze. And I'll show you that. Usually you don't glaze, just so you know, until the very end of a dessert, like right when it's almost done in the oven. But this particular cake seems to need glazing immediately. So you can see where we're at here. I have 1 inch, and usually at this point, I just take the apples, I cut the big slices, I take the big ones, and I just cut it in half. And then I kind of fan it out and it just goes into the center. You know, it just becomes the middle. Okay, so that is our cake. Okay, and at this point I mentioned to you that we would be glazing. Okay, and I just want to show you what that means, because usually when you're glazing, the tart or the cake or the pie is already cooked and you don't have to be very careful. But I use, there on the recipe, I said which brands I like, but I get an apricot spread. You can also take dried apricots and soak them and make your own apricot spread. But this is a good one because it has no sugar and it has just, I believe, apple concentrate. So it's a good one. And it's Saint Dalfour. Dalfour, and on the recipe I put the 2 brands that I liked, so you have those. And I usually put it in a pot or a plate, and I put a little bit of lemon juice, and you can see, because when you heat it up, it becomes like a liquid. And I have a pastry brush, and I'm just going to gently put the glaze, and I'm going to, when I'm brushing here, I'm not going back and forth like you're painting. I'm going all in one direction, okay? And I actually use my left hand to turn the pan, And I've got a big apricot there. I'm just going to get rid of that. That's not, and you're trying not to move around the apples. Again, it's not something you don't always glaze before you put in the oven. But because these apples I felt like it needed some kind of coating while it was cooking. So now that is our glaze. And you can see that it's very shiny and very beautiful. And 2 or 3 times while it's cooking, I will go back in. I won't take the cake necessarily out of the oven because you don't want to keep changing its temperature, but you will glaze this and you can finish when it comes out of the oven completely. You can give it another coat. As far as I'm concerned, you can glaze 3-4 times because the more glistening, the more beautiful. So that is the cake, and it is going in the oven. And it can go in the oven for about 40 minutes or maybe even an hour sometimes. And you'll know that it's done because the edges of the cake will be brown and the apples will be cooked. And you'll know, you can always put a little toothpick in, but this cake, I don't necessarily need to do that because you can actually see that it's done. So now we're gonna start to plate the things. And I did wanna mention to you that I also have some couscous that I made. And that's what I like to serve with the Moroccan tagine, but you don't have to serve couscous. Couscous is a semolina pasta, and it's a little tiny little grain. And why it's almost always served with Moroccan tagine, and you can make it the grain is so fast that I always read the package because sometimes it varies, but this is 1.5 cups of boiling water. And then you put the couscous in, and then you just turn off the stove and you put the lid on, and then it's done in 5 minutes. And you can make couscous and make a salad from it. And sometimes I cut up a lot of parsley and mint and I put it in the couscous so that it's all decorative and pretty. But this is whole wheat couscous, and it's very fluffy. And we're just gonna have a couple of spoonfuls of this grain, not too much, but I did want to show you that. And then we are going to also use the cutting board, and I just want to get this out and show you the stew where we're at here. Just a second, I'm just gonna give it a good stir, and how I'm gonna test with a fork to make sure everything's done. I'm going to test the squash is absolutely done. I can see that the eggplant is done just by looking at it. And how will you know? Because the eggplant actually gets all soft and mushy. Doesn't fall apart. It's still in its cube stage, but it too can just be with a squishy with a fork, kind of just like the squash. And I get a little bit of parsley, not too much, a little bit of mint. Those are my favorite things to put on it. And I love the smell of mint, and I'm gonna get the knife, and not very much actually. You can never go overboard with the herbs as far as I'm concerned. And I suggested on the recipe that you could use 3 things. You could actually use cilantro, and you could use mint and parsley. But if you didn't have all 3, just use what you have, you know. You don't have to have, it's just, I'm one of those people that have a lot of herbs in the refrigerator. And for those of you that have homes, I did try to grow herbs in my window this summer, but I just was constantly cutting the plants so much that I just couldn't handle just having a pot of herbs. I need to have a whole yard of herbs. But living where I live, there's no place for me to have a whole pot of herbs. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna plate this, and I'm gonna get, you could make it, you know, big platter and put couscous around and then put all the, but I'm gonna just make 1 serving for you so that you can see how we're gonna plate this. And I'm gonna get the couscous, and you want it to make sure that it's always fluffy and not stuck together. It likes to kind of stick together sometimes. Sometimes I even put a little bit of lemon zest on the couscous. It's really good to flavor it, but again, and then we're gonna take a big scoopful of this stew, And I'm going to lower this now because it's really cooked. In fact, I'm going to turn it off completely. And we're going to put this down here. Now, it's not soup. It could cook a few minutes more to get it a little thicker, but I actually think it's quite nice just the way it is. And then we're going to put a little bit of this fresh herbs, because when you're not using salt, the way that you bring up the flavors of things are with citrus, fresh herbs, and dried spices. And then we have our beautiful pomegranates, which lend themselves to everything, whether it's your oatmeal in the morning or your dinner here at night. And then we are baking our cake, which is going to take an hour, but I did actually make one earlier today, and we are going to, let me get this moved and cut over there. And I don't like when the counter is dirty. We're going to move this, and we have this beautiful, and this is the cooked cake. I just want to show you. This is the cooked cake, and you can see how many times I've glazed it because it's actually quite dirty on the edges of the pan. And I take a knife, and remember, this is a springform pan, so it's going to just release the cake immediately. Okay, and we're going to unspring it. Okay, woohoo! I always like woohoo that it's like free from the side, and I'm always happy about that. And it's not a deep cake, but it's a beautiful cake, and we can. The good thing about this kind of cake is you can take it in the car with you somewhere and just put the lid, and serve it when you get there. And then it's actually pretty sturdy. You can take the lid off, the bottom off. And remember, we can't forget that we have the paper underneath, so we can take that off as well. And then we would serve that like that. Okay? And that is actually our cake. And if you wanted to really see what that cake looked like, I tend to like to serve you. If you were here, we would all be eating together. And AJ, that is the real lessons of today for the second day of Rosh Hashanah. It's Moroccan tagine and apple cake, apple polenta cake, and this is the cake here, and it looks like this. I just kind of show you that I'm putting it here, and that is cake with no butter, sugar, oil, all healthy for you, made from whole foods. And it's really tasty and really delicious. And that is our show for today. Thank you so much.
No, thank you. You are amazing. I wish you would come here and just be my personal chef. And everybody's saying how wonderfully you explain everything. You're just a wonderful teacher. And also that people love your voice. Have you ever thought about doing voiceover acting?
Oh my gosh, my whole life. And everybody has been saying that to me my whole life. And I wish I was doing that sometimes, but yes, I've been told about my voice always.
Well, this is the perfect time, the pandemic. So many people are doing voice work at home. You can do it at home, and you have such a unique voice. I could see you being a character. You could play a very young girl or even a delightful animal character. I have a friend who's a really famous voiceover agent. Seriously, I'd like to introduce you to her.
No, I always wanted, what, people have told me so much, grocery store, wherever I am. And I start to, when someone says it to me, normally I didn't do it to you, but I'll say, are you an agent? Are you an agent? Because you want the agent. That's the thing. And I have been tested for this. And I was told, yes, I would be really good with kids things. And I was also told that I would be really good doing instructional manuals, teaching, because sometimes manuals have to be read out loud.
If you'd like an introduction, because the lady who I know, she is an agent. She directed me in the Audible book when I did The Pleasure Trap, and I think she did my book too. I can't even remember now. It's been so long, but I'd love to introduce you because you just.
Oh my gosh, I would love it. I'm one of those people that actually reads a book out loud. I used to read to my husband in bed. He was the best friend to me is someone that just will listen to me read out loud. And now I'm a single person, and I actually read out loud to myself in bed. And I always wonder, are the upstairs, is someone listening to me read out loud because they know that I'm in here by myself? So thank you very much, AJ.
I'm absolutely going to do this. I'm just scrolling really quickly. Here's a question from Gina. What was the point of having whiter apples?
Oh, you know what? The whiter apples is just, I bought several kinds of apples. I'll show you. Yesterday I was at the market and I literally bought like so many different kinds of apples. Really. And that whiter apple is this one. And do I know what it is? I don't know what this one is. It could be, in New York here, we have like thousands of kinds of apples. Like this was a Granny Smith. I thought it was a Granny Smith, but it's actually a Pippin and it looks like a Granny Smith. So when I go to especially the market, I just say to the guy, give me the apples that you have right now that are the best for. So the white apples came from this very red kind of thing, but I just tried to use all the same kind of apple on the one tart.
And Diane wanted to know what kind of knife you were using. And Gina said she'd love for you to teach us how to sharpen a knife. But I know you're already booked for you have another on the books. I think it might be December. So maybe you can throw that in.
I'm there with you on Thanksgiving. We're doing Thanksgiving together. And you could book me for December. I don't have a December date.
Oh, you bet. Oh, my God. I'm booked. Oh, my. You sure? I think I did.
Okay. Maybe you just booked me on your own. So, but you'll tell me later. But the kind of knife that I'm using, I use two kinds of knives. I just showing you. I have a lot of different knives, but these are all Wusthof, German knives. And there's things, I can't tell you how many years I've had these, maybe my whole adult life, which I don't know, is about 40 years old. And when we used to work in the restaurant, we had to bring our own knives. We had to bring our own knives, and you wouldn't even lend your knife to, your colleague because they were your knives. It's kind of like lending a paintbrush to somebody else. They're so personalized. So I always suggest that you, try out a knife. And I know a lot of people order online, but you want to make sure that it feels good in your hand. The weight is good. And then as far as sharpening, there's home sharpeners that you can use. I actually have one. There are steels. There's another kind of sharpener. And in New York here, I'm lucky that there's a man that comes around in an ice cream truck, believe it or not. And he is a knife sharpener. And he's got this dog with him inside, and he rings the bell, and you run outside. You try not to hurt yourselves. I usually am cooking when I hear his bell, and you run out and say, "Stop. I want my knife sharpened." So he sharpens my knives.
You almost gave me a heart attack. You are, look, see?
I am booked. Oh,
my
good.
God.
I'm not. Okay, so I didn't mean to give you a heart attack.
Because I don't have any openings till like March 3rd. So thank you. I'm so glad.
God. And what is my December date, AJ?
The 12th, Saturday.
Okay, the 12th. Okay. Then maybe I know it and I've forgotten because I'm only 1 month at a time. So I'm glad that you're into March. I hope we're all feeling much better by March and that we're not talking about a pandemic, but we're all still cooking together. And
two questions. Gina says, do you use the pomegranate seeds to finish decorating the pie, or is that for the tangine?
No, but you certainly could. Oh my God, you could decorate it with the pie. You could absolutely decorate it with the pie. I like these on my oatmeal in the morning. I mean, I could eat all these just by themselves. I always just consider, I'm a visual artist. My background is fine arts. And so for me, it's all about color, and we always eat with our eyes. So you just want to make everything look as pretty as possible, because then people aren't going to say to you, "Oh, why is that just all vegetables?" You've got friends that are eating meat only. And as soon as they see that, there's not a person I know that's not going to want to eat this bowl of vegetable tangine.
Yeah, that's why I always preferred red lentils to brown. They're just so much prettier,
Yeah, I think anytime you can get color into your food, that is the most ideal.
And Laurel says, can you grind your own almonds, or will it not be fine enough for the cake?
You can grind your own almonds if you have a really good, strong. I would do that. I think you could definitely do that in your NutriBullet or your Vitamix. I'm not sure. I would not do that in your Cuisinart, because what happens with the Cuisinart, the Escalade, I think you end up almost making peanut butter. And you have to just be very careful at, And I always just buy the Bob's Red Mill almond meal, just already. And Trader Joe's actually makes a really good one, and it's less expensive. So just get it at the Trader Joe's.
That's great. Well, this has been wonderful. I'm going to watch it again because I was monitoring the chat, but you are just a terrific teacher, Carole.
Oh, thank you. And I just want to remind everyone, if they have any questions, of course, they can ask Chef AJ, but you can reach me directly on my website. You can even sign up for a monthly newsletter, which is theveggievanguard.com. And then my Instagram account is @theveggievanguard. So thank you so much. And I wish all of you were here to eat with me. And AJ, thank you for inviting me back. I just love doing it.
Well, hey, I mean, yes, well, invited you back, but the people spoke at the last time you were on, and they said,
and now I'm going to share all this with my friend and your friend as well, Wendy, because it's her birthday, and so I get to go now. I'm going to pack
it's It's Wendy's birthday today. You know, I told Wendy Sachs I'd have her on the phone on the show if she'd like. I'm going to thank you. I'm going to text her. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah,
Carole.
I'm going to bring all of this, and I'm going to pack it up, and we're going to have a birthday celebration with polenta cake, and I don't know, we're gonna have like 4 people equally distant at the table, and having a nice birthday party.
Well, Wendy's college roommate Laurel Paley is watching.
Oh, I love that. I know Laura. I mean, I know her of Laura. So thanks so much for telling me. Thank you so much.
Pretty
and
cool.
See you again, and I'll see you very soon, all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Carole, and thank you guys for watching another episode of Chef AJ Live. If you've got nothing to do today at 2:15 p.m., please come back and I'll do my monthly Q&A with John Pierre. And tomorrow on the show at 11 a.m., we have the founder of PETA, Ingrid Newkirk. Take care, everybody, and thanks again, Carole.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you.